It's episode 13. I went to Hawaii because it's the offseason, baby. No reason to worry about the ice right now, but we got all kinds of business to attend to, and that's coming to you hot. All systems go, clear for launch in 2, 1 right now. We want to hear from you, Hardhead Hockey. Facebook, Twitter, reach out, hardheadhockey1@gmail.com. We're going to give you a shout out. Our question last week, what would you do with the cup for a day? From Boise, Idaho, I got Zach Siefkin saying he would take it out on his boat at Coeur d'Alene, notably a beautiful lake, and he would go tubing with it. And for those of you who have never gone tubing, perhaps we had a Father's Day episode, experienced your father try to send you into the next orbit on a tube on a lake. I don't know if you've really lived. I can say I have been there, and, you know, I might have brain damage or potentially a concussion. Grant, you ever been tubing? Been sent into another orbit?
Yeah, it wasn't a super common summer activity. I did a family friend, our family and like another family, and then another family went all up to Lake Travis one summer, and I got to go tubing. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. Lake Travis, beautiful. Also beautiful this time of year. The locals will tell you that later in the summer, especially. As the summer goes on, it gets nicer and nicer up there. Big fan of Northern Michigan. But, the tubing, great time. Can't say much. I did water sports always kind of escaped me. Like, I don't know. I never had the appeal of like jet skiing or wakeboarding or anything like that. That's why tubing's kind of fun. It's a very low educational curve. You just kind of hang on for dear life.
Low bar. No one's, no one's got high expectations out there. It's a low bar. And what a fun way to spend a day with the Stanley Cup, to go tubing. That's very creative.
Yeah, I feel like boating. People that have boats, what's the phrase? Like, what's better than having a boat, having a friend with a boat?
Ideal. Perfect.
What's better than winning the Stanley Cup and having a buddy that wins the Stanley Cup and lets you hang out with it for a day?
And it speaks volumes, too, that the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning over the last decade, every time they've won the Cup, they're around water. They take it out on the bay or in a harbor. Or they're always on some kind of body of water.
Yeah, it's all they have down there, though. Like, what else are you going to take the Stanley Cup to Publix?
Yeah.
That's true. Cameras are on. It's like, well, we got to put our best foot forward. And that for Florida is like the beach.
You can go to Wings, get an airbrush T-shirt. Spring break 04.
Every best photo of Florida is actually the camera facing away from Florida. So, keep that in mind.
If you tuned into social media this week, Hardhead Hockey introduced 2 new co-hosts, along with Grant and I from here on out, forever and always, are going to be Ella Dunn, the Labrador. She's 1-year-old. And Boone Miller, the Beagle mix. Did I get that?
Yeah,
right?
He's got some hound, and I'm not really sure what. Definitely a lot of Beagle, but he's got some spots on him that kind of have like a blue tick hound sort of vibe. We rescued him from shelter here in Columbus. Shout out Gigi's here in Columbus, and got him October of 22, right when the season was starting. And the girlfriend and I were out hiking one day, throwing out dog names. And I always kind of like the idea of naming a dog after, an athlete, sports reference. And I threw Boone out there after, of course, one of our favorite jackets, Boone Jenner. And we thought that was a good name. And then we saw the Beagle puppies that needed rescue. And it's something about a Beagle and the name Boone and the fall and everything. Just it all kind of came together in a really nice way. So he's been a blessing to the house. Super well behaved. There's a couple of parks here in Columbus. This has turned into a dog podcast, which I don't hate. Kind of always has been underneath the surface. But a couple of parks where they're fenced in, and you can ditch the leashes and let them really run around, which, of course, Beagles love that. So, yeah, love the dogs. Love the dog content. He's a big hockey fan.
Yeah, we're very dog friendly here at Hardhead Hockey. Just look at the logo. You don't have to search far to wonder why. Grant, through your description of fall and all things Beagles, I immediately thought of some kind of pumpkin beer, which we've turned the corner on the year. It's that time of year. That holiday season's coming up. Fall, cooler weather.
4th of July ends, buddy. I'm so fired up for fall. Hockey starting up, obviously. I'm a big college football guy. I wore pants out today. I'm just, people, this is kind of getting into like hot take territory. Like, oh, you don't like, I've never really been a fan of summer. Summer for me has always been like working like a part-time job to make money. It's super hot. When I was working construction, I was actually out in the field. You're working from like 5 to 9 because you're with the daylight, which is important. You make your money that way. But yeah, dude, it's so brutal. So shout out, tip of the hat to anyone still doing that. But then we played football, so summer was workouts in 2 days, which I probably should have put more value in back in the day. But fall's right around the corner. The Jackets had their development camp last weekend and had like the practice arena. The practice arena in Columbus is like attached to the main arena, and they had all the draft picks and young guys there, and had it open to the public, so you can go watch a little bit of the action, and it gets the blood flowing. You're just like, man, we're so close.
We are close to turning a page on the season. Yep. And as it gets cooler.
Which is, I don't, again, I'm sorry, I'm rolling now. I don't want to get, like, they did just lift the cup. We have to appreciate the season. But when you're a fan of a team like mine who has not played since April, it feels like it's been forever. So as awesome as the playoffs were, and I love all of it, and I'm excited for everything, and I want to, give the Panthers their credit. I'm assuming we've been talking off air about how the offseason it really does get your mind in a different place so quickly.
It does. The script turns quick. We're already at July 8th as we're recording today, and there's been over $1 billion spent on free agency. That was just on day one. As far as
crazy what a little cap increase will do.
Yep. Little pen to paper. And we talked about the mad scientist effect a couple weeks ago. That is in full form at this point. Some teams overspent. Other teams sat pretty idle. My lesson for the day, you fans who, again, and we've talked about it before, when July 1 hits, everyone is chomping at the bit like thoroughbreds, man. They just can't help but just sprint out of the gate. I got to spend that money. And we're going to look at a couple contracts today that are clear indications of being overeager. Some teams...
You have to have a little bit of that or else you're going to be left in the dust.
True.
But you've got to be smart. That's what makes all this amazing.
And other teams that sit idle and maybe don't do as much, don't spend as much, it's not a bad thing. You got to be patient. Teams that overspend on free agency look back and kick themselves years down the road, and we're going to get into that right now. So my lesson before we start, don't be discouraged if your team set by, we're pretty idle. They're probably doing that because they believe in what they've got already. You don't need to fix something that's not broken. So let it ride. We talked about, this example right here, Pat Verbeek, general manager of the Anaheim Ducks. They are sitting on a nice little golden nugget of prospects and younger players that they have built for years via the draft and in their farm system. They don't need to do a whole lot. You just let that diamond emerge and it's going to pay dividends for you. So that's a team that notably was very quiet through free agency this past week. And I think that that's a team to look out for this coming season. Okay, Grant, last week we started what I didn't realize was going to be a tradition. We're going to make it a tradition.
I didn't either.
We're going to roll with hockey team Kaboom. If you recall last week's episode, we compared fireworks to NHL hockey teams. Well, because I just visited the island of Kauai, we're going to keep it rolling with the Hawaiian island theme. So here's how this is going to work. I'm going to describe the islands to Grant, and he is going to associate that island with the first team that comes to mind. Grant, are you ready?
I'm ready. This one took a little coaching. I originally thought he meant what teams do I want to move to Hawaii, and I was confused. But after trying to explain it to me a little bit, I think I'm ready.
Okay, good. The first island, the most notable, where most people fly into, the island of Oahu. It's where the city of Honolulu is. The Dole Pineapple Farm originates there. Bustling city vibes. You got Hickam Air Force Base and Pearl Harbor Joint Naval Air Station. Still beautiful island, but definitely more of the metropolitan vibe just cemented onto a Hawaiian island. I'd say most popular, not to take away from any of the other islands. It is the most accessible. Grant.
It's where you fly in, right? This is kind of, I guess, what most people would experience. Is that the case?
That's
To
that's
an
correct.
extent?
Yes.
Yeah. This is the Leafs. This is the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is the headquarters of hockey. This is the capital. This is kind of your starting point 1A. There's good and bad. It's bustling city. It's a bustling team. This is kind of your starting point, I feel like.
Okay.
That's how I'm going with that.
I love it. If you fly farther west from the island of Oahu, you will run in to the beauty that is Kauai, where I just visited. Much more low key, known for its hikes, known for its outdoorsy affairs, canyons, cliffs, very, very established scene of local food trucks, waterfalls, rivers running through jungles. You've got chickens and roosters seemingly running all over the place with no law and order. They're not on a farm. They're just, the island is their oyster.
It's their island, Trent. They were there first.
Yep, I'm aware.
Yeah, so this one, to me, this evoked the Seattle Kraken because I feel like the Kraken Arena kind of has like an outdoorsy lodge feel to it. Kind of has this outdoors. The Pacific Northwest is not Hawaii. I want to be very clear. But what you described kind of evoked the feelings of nature and serene beauty, which that area of the world has a lot of. So I'm picking Seattle.
I think that's a great pick. Okay, next island. If you go back east, you'll run into Maui. Maui, known for its luxurious resorts, still the serene beauty, but just surrounded with probably much more luxury, maybe even more so than the other islands have to offer. Think posh, think getting spoiled on vacation, surrounded by a beautiful island.
Sure, yeah, this is the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm sure a lot of those luxury condos were built like with tax loopholes and maybe government kickbacks, and the Knights, they dominate loopholes and they're luxurious and everything's over the top. So that's the Vegas Golden Knights.
Some convenient subsidies being handed out. I see where you're going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, my last island here is the Big Island of Hawaii. What's it known for? It's known for lava, Grant. It's known for volcanoes. It's explosive. It's still growing today via its lava from its erupting volcanoes. Who you got?
So I didn't read this one because it got cut off in the script. So I'm going with the Calgary Flames because that made me think of lava and hot, and it's red. So it's Calgary.
Okay. Folks, that's our second edition of Hockey Team Kaboom. And if Grant's good with it, we're going to keep it rolling for at least a couple more episodes, as long as he doesn't feel too much pressure.
No, this is fun. This is like a pop quiz or like even like an improv thing. Where it's like, we need a thing from an audience. Like, hockey teams is NFL Islands.
You pick your own adventure here, Grant. You run that show. So.
I appreciate it. I hope I'm doing it justice.
Absolutely. Okay, everybody, all aboard. We've got so many transactions to get through. Time to get on the train. Transaction train station is right here. To keep this more shotgun style and a little quicker, we're going to preface the deal. We're going to present it to our man Grant out in Columbus, Ohio, and he's just going to answer straight up, is the deal good or bad, with a little bit of conversation, and then we're going to move on to the next because we have so many to get to. Starting with Detroit Red Wings signed Patrick Kane, 1-year deal, $6.5 million, trying to revitalize some Stanley Cup glory from his old Chicago days. Clearly later in his career, hence the 1-year deal, but probably some good value here for the talent that he still has to offer. Grant, what do you think?
Yeah, first off, I saw a lot Blackhawks fans annoyed by this, so that makes it a good deal in my bit. Yeah, he's still got some tread on those tires, so we'll be seeing a fair amount of him in Columbus. I'm not a huge Patrick Kane guy. I know he is an American, but was he on that 20? He had to be on that 2014 team.
Yes.
This goes back to that Olympics conversation where there's just like a generation of guys that I just feel like I missed in the USA. Maybe if I saw him play more for the USA, I'd have like the same nostalgia I'd have for like TJ Oshie or Mike Modano. Blanking on other guys from that kind of era. But like I don't have that with him. So, shout out to Detroit for paying him. And I think he'll still be in the news. He'll still get stuff done. They got Tarasenko too, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, I know that's not one. I mean, that's it's pretty good. That's a good haul. That's a good early haul.
Yzerplan definitely is raising some eyebrows. Steve Yzerman
He knows
what he's doing. All right, let's go down to Florida. Tampa Bay Lightning locked up Victor Hedman, 4 years, $8 million, and then inked Jake Gensel, recently acquired, 7 years, $9 million. Clearly believing in the youth, or I guess they preferred the age of Jake Gensel over Steven Stamkos, which is why he walked out the door, and we'll get to that in a little bit.
That's going to hurt the lot. I mean, it's cliche to be like, yeah, it's a locker room leader. Like, I do think that'll hurt the locker room. But, like, Gensel's a great guy to bring in. Like, this guy's going to get, like, 40 goals probably. So, like, how do you look at that and be like, oh, like, if you're a Lightning fan, you should still be pretty stoked. For both of you. I mean, they still believe in Hedman.
Clearly.
Which, yeah, I mean, yeah, I get it. Like, why wouldn't you, you know? So, shout out. This is a good move. You can't, how these things work is I can't really differentiate like Gensel coming in, but like Stamkos leaving. Even though there's like separate deals, like I do think they kind of flow within one another, right?
My analysis here is simple. I think Jake Gensel is a great player and will go down as a fantastic NHL All-Star. Steven Stamkos is a Hall of Famer. So how they're going to replace that, we're going to see it right here. Hopefully Jake Gensel can provide what Steve Stamkos is leaving behind.
Is Stammer putting up Hall of Fame numbers right now, though? That's what he did 6 seasons ago isn't going to matter. And that's cold. And maybe hockey more so than other sports, like perception and personality does matter. But it's not 2020 anymore, you know? So, like, how do you square that? How do you square that circle?
Right. No, that's a good point. And I do think that's a good, friendly contract that's going to look a lot better even in years to come as the cap keeps going up. So I like the signing. We'll see where Tampa Bay is. You know, they're definitely going to be in that playoff conversation again. So we'll see if it pans out. And we'll talk about that in the preseason primers once it's their turn. Let's go to the East Coast of Florida. Sam Reinhart locks up 8 years, $8.625 million. This is a steal. Florida having a phenomenal summer, obviously kicking it off with the Stanley Cup parade. And now you get one of the most consistent and up-and-coming forwards in the league. It's hard to even fathom that this guy used to play on a terrible Buffalo Sabres team and now is on one of the best deals in the league. 8.625, that's going to look like a gold mine in years to come.
Yeah, that's going to be, with the cap increases, and like, I'm usually hesitant of like really long-term deals like that. But he's like 57 goals last year or something insane. Like, yeah, this is, shout out Bill Zito, man. He's one of the best. Yeah, absolutely one of the best.
He is thriving.
I can't say enough things about him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great GM. Okay, former Carolina Hurricane Brett Pesce walks out the door, and he signs with the New Jersey Devils, 6 years, $5.5 million. Devils making a run. Sheldon Keefe, new head coach in Jersey, has got a lot of new weapons to play with here, and I like his situation all of a sudden a lot more than when he was standing behind that bench in Toronto.
Yeah, I think this is a good deal. Like you said, they've been really active. Brought in Cotter and Nosen, other guys that they brought in. Yeah, I mean, any guy that's coming from Carolina, maybe aside Gensel, because I remember seeing him at Pittsburgh, like all these guys just seem like just so solid. And I don't know if that's like system or individual talent, but I think he's a pretty solid. That's not a bad deal. $5.5 million for 6 years. Like, you know, Jersey's got something going there.
It's a top 4 defenseman at $5.5 million. That's good. That's good business.
Yeah, okay. You do that if you can stay healthy.
Grant, I've got a new figure of speech for the Chicago Blackhawks. They seemingly are providing a wall of protection around their baby boy. And when I say that, by no means want to imply that Connor Bedard is some baby. That he's a tough kid, going to be an all-star player for years to come. But they brought in Tyler Bertuzzi and Pat Maroon and already had Nick Foligno. So I'm deeming this three dads and a baby is the only reason I'm associating the word baby.
That's a good one.
But we got
that's a good one.
Three dads and a baby coming into Chicago to protect Connor Bedard moving forward. You got Bertuzzi, 4 years, $5.5 million. Teuvo Teravainen, 3 years, $5 million, coming over from Carolina. Pat Maroon, 1 year, $1.3 million, and Alec Martinez, 1 year, $4 million. They short up everywhere.
I don't know. To do the old school Brian Burke roster mechanism of like skill guys in the top two lines and then just a bunch of grinders and goons and meatheads in the bottom four. It feels like that's kind of the game plan right now in Chicago.
I don't hate it. I mean, you talk about
going back to what you said in the beginning. Listen, Connor is gonna grow up right before our eyes while he's still a kid. You know, it's fine to get the small kid bits out of the way. Because if you watch the Blackhawks, they seem everyone else on the team seemingly doing that as well. But I like all of these guys. I don't know if it's good roster building, but I also don't think Chicago's going to be significantly better than they were last year. This year, they're going to improve a little bit, but yeah, I mean. Pat Maroon 1.3. You're doing that because you need some muscle.
They're spending way more money than they did last year. I think that this probably doesn't get them to the playoffs, but I do think they're clearly going to be a better team than they were this past season, which was not very good. But this is a good step in the right direction. Kyle Davidson's got some, he's got some momentum. So I think with
keep your eyes out on that plan. Let me see. I want to see what the lineups look like when they start off.
Yeah. Okay. In a more controversial move, Rob Blake let Matt Roy walk from the Los Angeles Kings. He signed with the Washington Capitals, 7 years, $5.5 million. The Caps were surprisingly busy, Grant.
Yeah. He's another top four defenseman, right? Is what you're looking at. It's going to be tough to look at anything they do without kind of thinking of Pierre-Luc Dubois. And I know we hammered that pretty big last episode, so I don't want to harp on it. I don't want to harp on Dubois. I think the Caps did about as good of a job as they could have. They're not a team with a ton of cap space, if I remember correctly. I know we talked cap space a while ago. But, they seemingly sheared up the areas where they can. They're not going to move a lot on the wings, but if you're able to bring in some defensemen, which is kind of sneaky been an issue for them for a long time. They've kind of succeeded in spite of their lack. I would say I don't want to say muscle because that's kind of a cliche, but just general defensive stability. I say what they probably lacked. So it's a good move.
It's a good move on the forgiving end. I don't know where the Los Angeles Kings are headed. It's hard to formulate what the plan is here. If you would ask me three years ago, I would have said Rob Blake's got this thing going in the right direction. He's got a lot of good opportunity here with the pieces that he's acquired, and that has fizzled away quickly. So we'll see on their preseason primer when we talk about the Kings get into that more detail. Seattle Kraken. Grant, here is my team that I think overspent, probably one of the bigger duds of this offseason so far. Brandon Montour signed 7 years, $7 million. Chandler Stevenson, 7 years, $6.25 million with Seattle. First of all, as far as roster construction goes, I don't really see these fits. Second of all, Brandon Montour is coming from a Stanley Cup team in Florida where he was on the third pair by the end of the season. Now he's inked for almost a $50 million contract. I don't think that's a contract that's going to look very good in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, so let me preface this. I think both these guys are good. Do you think Seattle, one, overpaid and then gave them too many years? If these were 5-year deals, I'm thinking a little differently. And I kind of feel the same way about the Roy deal going back to the Caps. I'm just always hesitant with these really long terms. But, maybe try to get someone to move them. I think they got Montour. I think they see him as undervalued for what Florida was doing. He moves the puck, and Seattle wasn't very good last year. But you're right. They seem to be reaching a little bit. I think they're chasing that success a little bit, and this might bite them.
This is the price of free agency. We talked about it at the beginning of the episode. This is why teams who sit idle and maybe don't do as much, they're getting better value with their own homegrown assets that they have under the umbrella of their own organization. They don't need to go overpay for pieces like this.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, each one of these guys I think are good. I don't watch a whole lot I haven't seen a lot of Stevenson. He plays out in Vegas. I'll be honest, I don't get to see that much. So my experience with him is limited. I think they're fine. I don't know if this fits. I don't know if either one of those guys fits a plan. You want your team to have a plan, and when you feel like you don't have that, or if you can't sell that to the fans, if you're on the front office sides, it's usually a red flag.
Yeah, I think frankly, I think the best thing the Kraken has going for him right now is Vince Dunn, who came over that first year of their inception year, if you will. And I think he, just putting Brandon Montour next to him will probably make this contract look a little bit better. To your point, yeah, they're both good, probably overpaid. Okay, let's go to Nashville, Grant. I know you don't like it, but let's be real. They were busy. Barry Trotz is busy, and he's trying to turn things around right now. There was a glimpse of Nashville. What was it, like 2016, 17 when they faced Pittsburgh?
2017. It was my senior year of Worcester.
Yeah.
They swept the Blackhawks in the first round, and they were off to the races. And everyone and their brother was talking about how great of an atmosphere Nashville was. And I got the catfish and the Titans offensive line's chugging beers in a box. And, oh, man, this is what hockey could be this everywhere. Hockey is this everywhere. Nashville is, Nashville's fine. Go visit Nashville. Don't make it your personality. Nailed it. All these guys are great. They pay Stamkos. Pay him. Get him on your team. You're going to sell a lot of jerseys in Nashville. Marshall Show's a great player. I've always been a huge fan of him. I think these guys are great. Will they get out of the first round? I don't know. That's the part of all this that's so much fun, because it is like, it's exciting. And then if you're a hater, which maybe I have a little bit of that in me, you can just make jokes about how Nashville raised the banner, free agency champs 2024. You can you can poke the fun at that. So. Trotz he knows what he's doing. He's a winner in this league. Got to tip the hat to him for going for it. But if this crashes and burns, it'll also be really fun.
Just to recap, we got Steve Stamkos going to Nashville Predators, 4 years, $8 million. Amazing that Tampa offered him $3 million, and he just got a $5 million increase from that. Brady Shea, 7 years by $7 million. We'll see how that looks in a couple years. I do really appreciate Brady Shea's game, though, coming over from Carolina. They've lost a lot. We'll talk about them later. Jonathan Marchessault, I love this deal. This guy is a warrior. He's a gamer. 5 years, $5 million. This is going to be a crowd favorite. If you're a Nashville fan, you're clearly excited. Stamkos is going to sell jerseys, like you said. This Marchessault guy, he's going to bring the muscle. He's going to bring the heart. And
former Jacket.
You're looking at a city right now, beyond these players, you got Roman Josi on the blue line. You got Ryan O'Reilly in your center depth. You're talking about some big-time veteran names. I like that.
Yeah, that second and third line's still scary.
Yeah. Okay, Elias Lindholm, via trade, signs with the Boston Bruins, 7 years, $7.7 million. I don't hate it. Elias Lindholm, very popular player, very trendy over this last season. Kind of had a dip in production going over to the Vancouver Canucks. At one point was expected to be first-line center, playing alongside JT Miller. Definitely, during the playoffs, he was playing at third-line center there for a little bit because he wasn't producing. So I think this could work. The Bruins definitely needed an uptick and some offensive firepower down the middle, and this could be an answer.
Yeah, I think he got a bad rap for his time in Vancouver. As a bandwagon Vancouver fan, I was just waiting for that to hit, and it really just didn't. Still 29 years old. I think he's got a couple good years in front of him. Boston's a team that's always just seemingly reloading. So I think this is as good of a move Boston could have gotten in free agency, if that's fair. And maybe it's not, but I think this will probably work out. Mostly just because things just work out for Boston.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another Rob Blake subtraction, if you will. I don't want to say it's a bad move because it has yet to play out, but Rob Blake lets Victor Arvidsson walk to free agency. He signs with the Edmonton Oilers for 2 years, $4 million. And Edmonton then goes on to sign Jeff Skinner 1 year by $3 million. We said last week some team's going to find Jeff Skinner a very high-value contract because he's still got some juice in those legs. The dude can fly. Between Skinner and Arvidsson, now around McDavid, just adding a little more scoring depth that they desperately needed in that Stanley Cup final. I like these moves for Edmonton. Again, big question mark for LA.
How are these so team friendly? How are they able? How's Edmonton? I mean, I guess because they had such a, they made it to the Cup. I guess that's the answer to my own question. But that's 2 years. Who's signing 2-year deals these days?
Arvidsson was hurt a lot of this past season, so that probably drives a little caution.
Prove me deal a little bit.
Yes.
How old is he? Let me look this up real quick. Keep talking.
Jeff Skinner hasn't had a great season in Buffalo for a long.
That one makes sense. That would make sense to me. That one makes sense. Arvidsson's 31. Okay, these make more sense now. I thought he was younger.
Skinner is a guy more of like a reclamation project where teams that are in a cup window, you have to find these guys if you're going to stay underneath the cap and still compete. You can't go out and spend big time dollars. You've already done that. That's why you made the Stanley Cup final. So
here's a guy, 24 goals last year.
Here's a guy. Okay, Grant. Let's go to Vancouver really quick. We'll finish this up. In that trade with the Boston Bruins, Jake DeBrusk goes the other way. The Canucks sign him for 7 years, $5.5 million. Sad to see him go. I really liked him in Boston. I thought he had a much better year as opposed to the previous 22-23 season where there were a lot of question marks about him going out the door. But good for him, getting a good long-term contract. He's going to be surrounded with a lot of high talent and a team with Rick Tocchet that's trending in the right direction.
Yeah, you nailed it, that last bit. Trending in the right direction. I would describe like you said, I liked him a lot in Boston. I worry that I just won't see much of DeBrusk until the playoffs if Vancouver makes it again. But yeah, he's in that prime window where signed a big contract, man. You're 27. It's time to cash in on your development. So I wish him the best. And I wish Vancouver the best.
Yeah. All right, let's go out to Denver. Jonathan Drouin signs a 1-year deal for $2.5 million. We'll talk about it in the Avs preseason primer. They are in cap hell right now, and I can't stand it. And we're going to talk about it at a different day. I got a lot to say, but not right now.
What do you think, Trent? Is this a good one? Like, reasonable hit?
Fantastic deal for 2 reasons. One, he another reclamation project similar to Jeff Skinner, who we just described with the Edmonton Oilers. When you're in a Stanley Cup window, these are the fines that you have to have because you are in cap hell. Usually when you're competing for Stanley Cups,
you need guys that are hungry on the back end of their prime.
100,000%. And Jonathan Drouin, the main reason I love this deal is the loyalty that he showed. He was offered by the New York Rangers and a few other teams. I don't know for sure, but I know the Rangers gave him an offer that was far north of this, and he turned it down to come to continue playing for the Avs at a cheaper cost. So it shows his loyalty to the franchise. He's best friends with Nathan McKinnon. It's a great deal, and I'm glad we got it done.
I'm happy for you. Like you said, there is an elephant in the room with the cap situation, but in a vacuum, this is a very good win now position.
Okay, Grant, let's go to your town. Let's go to the city of Kings, my man.
Let's get on the road to downtown. Let's go to the Arena District right now.
Let's go. We got Sean Monahan signed with the Columbus Blue Jackets. 5 years by $5.5 million. Go ahead and call that the reunion of Johnny Gaudreau and Sean Monahan. And then you got hometown hero, kind of, Jack Johnson. 1 year at a league minimum, $775,000. How do we feel?
Okay, let's start with Monahan. When this came down the line, I was a little skeptical. 5 years, long time, but in perspective to all of those deals that we just talked through. And I think that's important because the market drives these things. I think that's very reasonable. Maybe you overpay by $1 million, but then you don't get them. So what are you going to do? We talked about one of my biggest things with the Jackets is we need to play the young guys. We need to play Fantelli. We need to play Sillinger. We need to play Vernikov. We need to know who these guys are. I initially saw that our big free agent signing was a center. Granted, yeah, he played with Johnny. I was a little skeptical. It was like, are we going to take minutes from the young guys? I think after, taking a day, calm down from this, I think this gives those young guys a little bit of room to play without having to be, Fantelli's not ready to be the first line center next to Goudreau. That's just not the situation we have in Columbus right now. We're not Anaheim where we're just throwing young guys out there, just letting to see what happens. So the 5 years matches up with Goudreau right now has 5 years left. If these guys can get a shred of chemistry back and Johnny can go back to scoring 30 goals a year, which we all want, this is a slam dunk. And it doesn't necessarily have to get us to the playoffs. I don't think it will, but it has to start building something with Johnny. It's been 2 seasons. He's had 2 different coaches. He hasn't had a lot of talent around him, if we're being honest. And it's been hurting. But if you can get this to work, it takes care of that first line. And that's worth it. Jack Johnson, league minimum. Bit of context. He never moved. He was here from 2011 to 2017. When he won the Cup with Colorado, he brought the Cup to his little suburban hometown here in Sebus. Played 80 games last year. I don't hate this. I think this is actually kind of an endearing move. This is one of those, if you can't be optimistic in July about your hockey team, that's a problem. I want to be optimistic about all of this. And after kind of seeing some projected lines, reading the quotes in the paper and stuff, I can get behind these moves.
There's a consistent theme across the league every offseason with chemistry, and all it takes, it's as simple as a change of scenery where all of a sudden new chemicals mix and you're able to reignite some of that prior fame, that prior firepower, I think is what I'm trying to say. And I think that's exactly what you're sitting on here with Sean Monahan. It doesn't always work, but this is a case where I think you got a little kaboom potential here, Grant. Kaboom potential.
We're setting off the cannon, maybe. And
I love it.
Hockey still has those intangible kind of characteristics that you love, where it is really just these two guys get along really well. I love baseball. I love a lot of other sports, but I'm not against advanced analytics in any capacity. I think they play a huge role in scouting and evaluating, but you can kind of lose the romanticism of baseball a little bit by just talking about spin rate and launch angle and exit velo. And sometimes it's just nice to be yo, this dude's cool to have on the team and everyone's better when he's around. And hockey has that because, when you're digging out the puck on the boards, you want the guy next to you. You want to get along with him, not even at a personal level, just on the ice chemistry point. So, if Monahan and Johnny can get it going again, they were really good in Calgary. They were 1-2 on goals, I think, for 4 years straight. So anything they can do to get this going is going to be a positive.
There's something beautiful about the NHL where, beyond your McDavid and your McKinnon and the obvious names who all are going to play on the Olympic teams, right? Beyond those guys, you got the majority of the league. It literally comes down to the simplicity of who's going to go out there and haul ass the most. Who's going to put on the blue collar work boots and get after it, like you were saying. So, and that's where guys are likable. So with that, are you ready to clean up the house?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. This was good.
For the sake of time, I deleted the trades we were going to talk about because I want to get through this. And I don't know.
I think it's a good move. Yeah, we'll power through.
So NHL housekeeping, as always, get out your preferred cleaning devices for your house, especially if you just adopted a dog and it's a Labrador. You're going to have dog hair in a lot of new places, and you're going to have to assess that situation. And we've had conversations with Ella about, potentially picking up a part-time job to help out around here. So we'll see if she ever gets off the couch and works around here. So yeah.
You're cold-blooded, man.
I'm kidding, Ella. I'm kidding. She's sitting right next to me. Okay, NHL housekeeping. Dallas Stars. Grant, I want you to speak to this one. They opened up. This is how you take care of your fans, folks. The Dallas Stars ownership has a new television station that fans can watch the games for free. There are a lot of teams in the league who have butchered this situation and made hockey so inaccessible in the local areas when all these fans want to do is just cheer on the team that they love, and they can't do it. So kudos for Dallas here. Grant, can we get some context?
Yeah, so the Stars' new regional games, so games that are not nationally televised, will be on a service called Victory Plus. And I know a lot of us feel overwhelmed or fatigued by all of these like such and such plus, or like, the streaming apps. I all now have to be on my smart TV. I understand the headaches with that. This is free hockey for fans in Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma. It's a pretty big footprint. So if they're able to get this in front of a lot of people, I think it's a huge move by the Stars, getting basically direct to consumer hockey, which has been nearly impossible. I don't know how else to say that. They were on Bally. Jackets are on Bally. I have struggled to watch the Jackets in a traditional way like I did 5 years ago. I have to buy Bally Sports Plus for $25 a month, and it barely works. I have to go to bars to, I'll never say no to going to our bar and having a beer and watching the game, but it's more of a headache than it was when we were kids, where I could just turn on the TV, channel 29, Jackets were playing. That era is gone. I think a lot of fans are struggling to kind of come to terms with that because they're just mad with change. And the Stars doing this is change, but I do think it's change with the fans' priorities or the fans' interest at the main priority. So I hope teams are able to do this. It's not easy. There's this the Victory Plus, the parent company of that, it's like based in Dallas, so there's already like a built-in relationship there. There's a lot of different things moving. Not every organization can do this, but if you can make this work in some capacity, I think it's huge for hockey. When hockey's on TV, man, it struggles in the markets. The best markets, when we say best markets, like attendance and just overall vibes, it's because like their TV ratings usually are pretty high. So they're the fourth team to part from Bally. The Golden Knights, what is going to become the Utah Hockey Club, and the Florida Panthers each signed deals outside of Bally. I think Seattle's doing a local broadcast affiliate. So everyone's kind of doing different stuff, but Dallas is going. The Dallas is going like overly digital. So those teams I just ran off were like over the air, like antenna channel, like channel 22 in your local market. Like this is more of a kind of platform that the Stars can own.
I know in Denver, the Stan Kroenke standoff with Comcast has
it's terrible.
Butchered away any resemblance of loyalty to the fan base, and it's left a big sour taste in a lot of fans' mouths because you can't watch the games if you live in Denver. So now
Altitude, right? Is that what that channel is
exactly.
called? Yeah.
So now you got to illegally stream it, and you shouldn't have to do that if you're just trying to cheer on your team. So with non-traditional sports on TV, Grant, we've got the Copa Soccer tournament has been alive and well. A lot of great soccer, actually. The Euro tournament's been fascinating to watch. Big time game. Canada takes down Venezuela. I think it was the quarter or semifinals.
Quarterfinals. Canada has qualified for the semis. They play Argentina tomorrow night. If you're listening to this, it'll be tonight. Shout out to Canada. There's a guy for the crew, Jason Russell Rowe, on the Canadian team. So I'm rooting for him. I don't know if I mentioned this on the pod. I was hanging out in Atlanta for work a couple of weeks ago, and I was watching the USA play Brazil, and Canada was prepping for this tournament in Atlanta. And some of the assistant coaches for the team came to the bar, and I had a couple beers with them, talked to them about soccer and Jason Russell Rowe and all the great things that they're doing up there. So this was cool. This is a little crossover episode here between all my interests.
It's a very, very cool moment, folks. Sidney Crosby shows up at the Canada versus Venezuela game and meets the Canadian soccer team in the locker room cheering on the boys. Not close to home. Crosby just loves Canada, and we're really looking forward to that trade that Pittsburgh's going to pull off with Colorado to get Sidney Crosby out there. So
One more ring.
Kyle Dubas, if you're listening, please do it. Okay. Chicago was not on Tyler Bertuzzi's radar until a phone call from Nick Foligno showed up on July 1st, the opening of free agency. I put this in here because I think it's so interesting. This isn't the first time we've heard about something like this. The influence players have on a team with a simple text or phone call to try to get guys to come play for their team. And it works, clearly. Nick Foligno, I didn't know they were buds.
I didn't either, but this doesn't surprise me, man. That's the type of dude Foligno is. He's a real grab life by the horns. He's a dude. He was the captain here in Columbus for a long time. I think he just has captain energy. He's a great voice in the room. He's a great voice on anything. He's a great interviewer. Solid player all around. I think he's perfect for Chicago right now. This kind of like bridge between eras, and he's going to put their organization's interest ahead of everything. And if you're able to lobby Tyler Bertuzzi to come on your team because you think he's going to make you better, that's great. This is not out of by flings at all.
Grant, It's time to wrap up housekeeping. It's time to kick off our first preseason primers of the offseason. And for every single fan base out there, we're going to be giving a primer to every single team in the league. So stay tuned the rest of the offseason as we look forward to the 2024-25 season. Starting with the Atlantic Division, we got the Montreal Canadiens. Finished last in the Atlantic Division. Notable moves of late. Pretty stagnant. They traded up at the draft in the first round with the Los Angeles Kings. Got a very good prospect there, and they locked up big-time budding star in Juraj Slafkovsky for 8 years at $7.6 million. That is a deal. They hedged their bet early. The production probably doesn't match that value right now, but in years to come, I do too. Big body. You can tell he's got a lot of leadership qualities at a very young age. And I think $7.6 million in as short as 2 to 3 seasons is going to look like a genius move. The last season of his ELC is this year, that entry-level contract. And beyond that, they were pretty quiet on free agency and trades. Kind of one of those teams just sitting on the prospects that they do have, notably Key Fords, Alex Newhook, Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, and Nick Suzuki, and as just noted, Juraj Slafkovsky. The average age on their blue line is 25 years old. A lot of budding ELCs there. We'll see how they play out. There's a lot of potential. Doesn't mean it's going to, result in victory, but it could. And they've definitely done a good job giving them the opportunity to do so. Veteran presence in Michael Matheson and David Savard. And then ELCs to Bud are Lane Hudson, Caden Gould, and Justin Barron, to name a few. And Arbor Jekaj, I think that's how you say that last name?
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
Filed for arbitration. Another one of those young guys. He's 22, 23. Arbitration essentially is a lawyer is going to decide between the player's agent and the player's team, and they're going to come to an agreement on what the player is worth for his next contract. These can get ugly. It has become
You want to avoid these.
Yeah. It's become more of a consistent thing, though, in the league. It doesn't have to be this big, ugly zit on the forehead that it used to be. I remember when Ryan O'Reilly took the Avs to arbitration back in 2010. That was ugly. That did not, and he was gone.
You like a real big deal. You're like, whoa, it's going to arbitration.
Yeah.
And it made like a real, like it would like linger. It would linger on guys' careers, or that's what you would associate guys with.
We see it more often now.
Yeah.
When guys end their entry level contract and it's time to really sign their first big contract, their bridge deals, when they're restricted free agents. This is where we see it. When they're restricted, they're gonna play for this team, unless of course something crazy happens. More than likely though, they're gonna play for the team that they just played for. They just have to agree on a number, and this is a very fair way to do it. So
yeah,
doesn't have to be a division if it's amicably executed.
You got a good lawyer.
Exactly. The keys to success for the Montreal Canadiens, for me, they've got a little space to move if they want to. They've got $10.1 million and they have only filled 18 of 23 contracts. Now, some of that is going to go to arbitration. We just said is going to arbitration. That's on the blue line. There is potential to move the contracts of either Josh Anderson or longtime veteran Brendan Gallagher to continue to instill this youth movement. They have the space to do so. They may be looking years down the line and wanting to save some of this space for contracts they know they're going to have to pay up, i.e. potentially an Alex Newhook if he really comes on the scene this season. They are still missing a true starting goaltender, in my opinion. They seem to be high on this Sam Montembeault. 3 years left at his $3 million deal. He's a decent stopgap, had an okay season. But for them to have success, they're going to have to capitalize on their youth. And hopefully some of these entry-level contracts make the next jump this coming season. You have any more analysis there?
Yeah, I think they got Dimidov in the draft, right? They got like our guy that we were waxing poetically about. So shout out to that. Like you said, it feels like it's kind of the youth movement. Don't chase anything with the goalie position. Let these young guys kind of play. I'm interested to see how this transpires. It's weird not thinking of Montreal as like a real playoff contender, because I think I usually just casually just kind of like include them in the Atlantic, but I don't know how many like great Canadian teams I've ever witnessed in my life. I think they're getting there just on brand recognition, which is how you can build that with just letting these young guys kind of mature. And you just got to make sure that it's tough. It's tough to trust young guys. They usually make mistakes.
You're not wrong. I do love your opinion in letting them play. That's how the team builds and team gets better. And you have to work through those growing pains. And there's a lot of potential here on this roster that it's not going to be realized if you just bury them and go, like you said, go chase some expensive free agent goalie and destroy some of that cap space that you could commit to some younger assets.
That cap space, that flexibility is a huge asset for them right now. And I know that if you're, I don't know how many Canadian fans we have listening, but like, I know that doesn't help you sleep at night just because like your team has cap space. Like I know at a certain point you want to just see a good product on the ice and you want to see talent. So it's easy as an outside observer to say like, oh, but the cap space, but the flexibility, but that really is a huge asset. I think it's very telling that in the early days of free agency, the Canadians weren't one of these teams swinging for the fences on things. They were kind of like modest in their game plan early on. So I think that's telling that they have a vision for like the future or a long-term kind of idea.
I would be surprised if they don't try to move Josh Anderson sometime during this next season, at least up until the trade deadline. And we'll see if there's a buyer. That the contract doesn't look great, but I do still think he's got some value on a contender. My prediction for the Montreal Canadiens, I think they get better. I think some of these ELCs do start to work out. I've always liked Cole Caulfield and Slavkovsky. I think Slavkovsky's only going to get better. I think they push for a wild card, they get better, and they just missed the playoffs in the Atlantic Division.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be super close, but yeah, I think they're going to be like a tough team. They're going to be a team that like scores 6 goals a night randomly. And you're gonna be like, whoa, what just happened there? But then like they're never gonna like get like a top 2 or 3 spot in the Atlantic. But they'll be like a team that just gets on fire randomly.
Agree. All right, let's go down the road. Let's go to Ottawa for our second preseason primer of the offseason. The Senators were 7th in the Atlantic Division. This is a much more, I'd say, interesting and dramatic situation to look out for, especially for this upcoming season. They traded Jacob Chychrun for Nick Jensen and a 2026 third. That's going to the Washington Capitals. And they also acquired starting goaltender Linus Ullmark from the Boston Bruins in exchange for Jonas Korpisalo, a 2024 first round, and Mark Kastelik. Love this deal for Ottawa. And not a bad deal there for Chychrun. I just don't think he really found a home in Ottawa. It didn't pan out, I think, how he wanted to when he originally came over from Arizona. They then went on to sign Shane Pinto. Some speculation there is if he wanted to stay in Ottawa, but got him in for 2 years by $3.75 million. That's great for right now. It is a bridge deal, and that's going to cost a lot more probably in a couple seasons because this kid's a stud. And then free agency day, they go on to acquire veteran David Perron, 1 year, $4 million. And most notably, bringing in new head coach Travis Green, who's known for his offseason workouts and getting teams ready to go in the first half of the season.
I'm sure the boys love to hear that.
Yeah, I'm sure they're pumped for that.
Yeah.
Key forward on the depth chart here, Tim Stutzel. I've never pronounced his name correct, but he is very talented. Stutzel. Yeah. Veteran Claude Giroux, Brady Tkachuk, Drake Batherson. Defense, a little more thin. You got Thomas Chabot and Jake Sanderson leading the top pair. Obviously, just mentioned Nick Jensen coming back in the trade for Jacob Chychrun. He's steady. After that, it gets a little thin. Goaltending all of a sudden is solid. They got Linus Ullmark starting, and then Anton Forsberg in the backup position. He's always been a very solid backup.
Yeah.
For me, the keys to success for the Ottawa Senators to get better, and they have to get better. They cannot continue this regression. They're tougher to play against up front. What's going to be the make or break is their ability to stay consistent and to withstand injury. Josh Norris had his third season-ending shoulder surgery in his very young career at this point. Josh Norris, a very talented player, $7.9 million on a 6-year contract, can't keep missing games to injury. You're talking about older names, David Perron and Claude Giroux. They can still score. They can still be warriors out there. I just don't know if they're going to be able to hold up consistently for 82 games. And when you start to get holes in that lineup, that's where I think the consistency is going to collapse on itself. Linus Ullmark will have to stand tall with his new tall order here in Ottawa. The biggest storyline is going to be Brady Tkachuk. There's already been rumors start to heat up. He just watched his brother win a Stanley Cup, and he's chomping at the bit. If they don't find success early in Ottawa, plan on seeing his name in the headlines for the rest of the season in trade rumors. So much so, he might demand one.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't come to that. I think you're right. This feels like a team that should be better than they are sometimes. I think going back to when Stutzel, now you got me saying it. When he got there in 2020, like the post-COVID season, I was really high on him. I think he's a really exciting player. Obviously, he's had some great seasons already as a young player. I thought that they would be kind of off and run it in terms of talent and who they were. And they feel like they were working to there, then regressed a lot. So I don't know. I mean, they haven't made the playoffs since 2016, 2017. That's a long time. I mean, you look at it and you say well, what can you say about COVID, the bubble? They've tried to kind of reload, but man, they're. I feel like we're kind of getting into year 3 or 4 of this rebuild, and it's not looking super great. I like Jake Sanderson. I think he's a really exciting young defenseman to look at. I like Brady Tkachuk. I think if he's on your team, you're excited to watch him play. But you're right. It feels like they're just not as tough to play against as they were 2 seasons ago. And maybe that just wears off at a certain point. I don't know.
There was a lot of potential. The Claude Giroux move was a big show of force. And I think the fan base thought the team was going to be moving quickly into a successful direction. And it just hasn't panned out because of the inconsistency.
I can relate.
The forward group is very talented. As soon as injuries start to pile up, you're looking at a very different, easier team to play against.
I don't know.
And you're right. Beyond
Ottawa's weird.
Yeah, you're right. The Giroux trade was a show of force in a successful direction. It didn't pan out. And when you start to get injuries to this team, it gets thin. And beyond that top pairing on the blue line, it gets thin. Nick Jensen will be able to back that up a little bit. But as soon as we start to pile up any injuries here, they're an easier team to play against. I don't think they're fooling anybody. So for my prediction, I think they stay idle. I think they're going to have success early because new head coach Travis Green is known to have very strong records in the first half of the seasons. but I think they're going to stumble with consistency as we start to see injuries. And I got them finishing the same position, and I think GM Steve Staios is going to feel the hot seat.
Maybe. Certainly a possibility.
So just bold predictions here. Not saying that's going to happen. This team is very talented in an Atlantic division that is going to see some changing of the tide. We talked about Tampa Bay earlier. They look like a very different team now. There's going to be some jockeying around and some potential for new teams to step up and take some playoff spots. So, and Ottawa could absolutely do that.
They could be. I mean, they could be a team. They could be a team that it just kind of comes together. I'm skeptical of that, but crazier things have happened. There's always one team. There's always one team that just shocks you. You know.
I think it's going to be the Ducks. I'm calling it. This is my shocker of the year.
You're out of your mind. Wow.
All right, you ready for the hard hats?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, the hard hats of the week, as always, are sponsored by Leroy's Bar. Located in the heart of Worcester, Ohio, Leroy's establishment has provided cheap pitchers and a safe haven for blue-collar workers alike since 1969. Leroy's can be your hockey home for all the NHL off-season action. Drink responsibly and drive safe. Grant, my hard hat of the week is going to Barry Trotz. We talked about it earlier.
Oh, what
the man was a magician on free agency day, brought in Jonathan Marchessault on a steal, Brady Shea from Carolina, and most notable, Steven Stamkos, future Hall of Famer to the city of Nashville. All of a sudden, hockey's relevant again in the South. Not that it hasn't been for years, but it's even more relevant.
Like I said, off-season champions. That's a good one. I'm gonna keep mine local. Jack Johnson, defenseman coming back. Listen, underlying numbers at a certain point said this guy's a net negative on the ice, but we're not even to the point with this team of caring about stuff like that. Jack Johnson picked up the phone, called Don Waddle, or most likely Rick Nash or his old buddies in Columbus. I don't think he played with Nash, but he called him and said, I got one more in me. I already live here. I can just take I don't know what he's driving, but he can get to the arena quickly. Give me that league minimum. Players, the narrative, this vibe that the Jackets have, I think unfairly had or built a reputation of players not wanting to play here. I think that's BS. Here's Jack Johnson, an NHL veteran, an American, saying, I want to be here. Thank you, Jack, for answering the call, or making the call, actually, in a more wild sense, but coming here and putting it on for one more year.
We love you, Jack Johnson. You're an American hero. Okay, folks, that's going to do it for us here at Hard Hat Hockey. Ella and Boone send their best across the country. Thank you for tuning in to all the offseason action. It's been electric. Preseason primers coming up. We got the Detroit Red Wings and the Buffalo Sabres, and probably going to add a few more for the next episode. And we all hope you enjoyed Hockey Team Kaboom featuring the Hawaiian Islands. May you take that little piece of Hawaii to your day-to-day and just find that peace in your life, in your blue-collar lives. We love you. We look forward to seeing you this weekend